Jake Carter leaned against the kitchen counter, nursing a cheap cup of coffee while rain lashed the windows. The house felt colder than usual, quieter. Something was off. Buddy, his mutt, lay curled by the radiator, ears twitching at the sound of the wind. He didn't need to check the clock. He knew the time. Lindsay was late again. She used to barge into his world like a thunderstorm, long legs, jet black hair, and heels that echoed on concrete. Back then, she needed help with a busted Ford, called him her savior while he wiped grease off his hands. A month later, beers at a dive bar. A year later, shouting matches between kisses. Then came vows and promises, her calling him her lighthouse, him believing they'd weather anything. Now the foundation was giving out. The front door slammed. Buddy jumped up. Lindsay walked in like a storm in heels, coat soaked, eyes colder than the rain. Her phone vanished into her pocket like she was hiding a tool. Jake tried a smile. She didn't return it. "I made dinner," he said, placing 2 plates on the table. "Where were you?" "Work," she snapped, dropping her coat without looking at him. She didn't smell like jasmine anymore, just someone else's cologne. Expensive, male. Jake's chest tightened, but he swallowed the suspicion. "I waited," he said quietly. She crossed her arms. "You always wait. You sit in that damn garage like it's your shrine. How long do you plan to play with junk?" The workshop. His pride. Engines, tools, oil-stained hands. His place of purpose. She used to brag to friends, "My husband works magic with machines." Not anymore. "It's not junk," he muttered. "It paid our bills, kept us going." "Us?" Her voice turned sharp. "There's no us anymore. I'm done playing house with a man who smells like gasoline and failure." He froze. Years of dreams, kids, road trips, lemonade in the backyard, all shattered in her sneer. "What happened to you?" His voice cracked. "You loved me." "No," she said with a bitter laugh. "I needed you. That's different. Now, I got someone real, a man, not a whimpering mechanic who can't even satisfy his wife." The words hit like a steel-toed boot to the chest. Jake couldn't speak. She grabbed her coat, glanced at their wedding photo, 2 grinning fools, and turned to leave. "You'll get the divorce papers," she said at the door. "Goodbye, Jake." The door slammed. The silence swallowed the room. Jake stared at the untouched plates, cold beans, empty chair. His reflection in the sink mirror showed a crack across his face he hadn't noticed before. Buddy nudged his leg, but Jake didn't move. A real man. The phrase looped in his head like static. How did he not see this coming? Maybe because he still loved her. Maybe because he believed they were a team. He sank into a chair, gripping a chipped mug labeled Best Husband. Whiskey burned down his throat, but the fire didn't dull the sting. Buddy rested his head on Jake's knee, eyes full of quiet worry. Rain slammed against the window like laughter. Alone. That word finally made sense. Less than an hour had passed, but the house already felt like a grave. Their wedding flickered in his mind. Lindsay in that simple white dress, spinning across a cheap dance floor, whispering, "You're my lighthouse." Now that light had gone out, and somewhere along the way they'd both gotten lost. Jake slammed his mug down, whiskey splashing across his hand. "A real man," she'd said. Those 3 words stung more than the liquor. He'd seen it coming, months ago. Lindsay drifting away, glued to her phone, always working late, always smelling like someone else. He'd asked once, quietly, "Are you seeing someone?" She didn't even blink. "You're being paranoid, Jake. I'm just tired." And he believed her, because love does that. It blinds you. He still held on to the woman who used to meet him at the door with a kiss and warmed his hands in winter. That woman was gone. Now she called him worthless. In life, in bed, a waste. Jake stumbled to his feet. The whiskey was catching up. His knuckles were white around the bottle as he poured another shot, his head buzzing with her words. 0. He thought back to the early days. Bare mattress, creaky floors, her laugh in the dark, the way she once whispered, "You're the best, Jake." Now, 0. Who was she with? Who was this real man she ran to? His fists clenched, but they trembled. Buddy barked once, sharply, his gaze fixed on an empty corner of the kitchen. Jake turned, nothing there, just shadows. But something stirred inside him, something darker than rage. And then he heard it. A whisper, a memory, his grandmother's voice. Edna, steel-spined and colder than Chicago frost. "Always repay the debt to those who betray," she used to say. Jake repeated it under his breath. The words felt heavier now, soaked in pain and liquor. Repay the debt. The air shifted. The shadow on the wall stretched into the shape of an old woman. Long dress, stillness like a statue. He blinked, gone. Damn, Jake muttered, his heart pounding. He stumbled to the window. In the glass, a flash. Not his reflection, but hers. Edna's eyes, black as coal. Repay the debt, the wind seemed to say. He dropped back into the chair. The whiskey trembled in his cup. Lindsay betrayed me, he said aloud, and then louder. Repay the debt to those who betrayed, Buddy barked again. The shadow grew, thin, tall, still. Earth and wool filled the air. Edna's voice cut through the fog in his mind. You know what to do, boy. Then, blackness. Jake's head hit the table. The mug tipped, whiskey spilling across the floor. Buddy howled. Outside, the wind howled back. Repay the debt, Jake whispered into the dark. Meanwhile, Lindsay stormed into the rain, not looking back. The front door rattled in its frame behind her. She moved like a woman released. Eyes wild, heart racing, adrenaline pumping. Her phone lit up. Trevor calling, she smirked. Jake's face flashed in her mind. Pale, pathetic, still trying to hold on. He didn't even fight, she scoffed as she slid behind the wheel. Spineless. 20 minutes later, she stepped into Trevor's luxury high-rise. Leather, glass, the scent of wealth. He opened the door with his shirt halfway undone, the ever-present smirk curling at his lips. Done? He asked, handing her a glass of wine. I'm free, she said, kicking off her shoes. You should have seen him, standing there like a sad little loser. Told him he was nothing. In bed, in life, he just stood there, soaking in the pity. Like always, Trevor laughed, tracing his hand down her thigh. Honestly thought he might swing at me, he grinned. She rolled her eyes. He just stared. 10 years with that man, and not once did I feel like a woman. And now? She purred, pulling him close. He didn't answer with words. They fell into bed, hungry, angry, wild. She clung to the moment like a prize, her laughter sharp with vengeance. Here you go, Jake, she thought. Drink your whiskey, cry to your dog. Trevor passed out after. She lay awake, staring at the ceiling, his arm draped over her like a chain. I'm done with that life, she whispered. This is what I deserve. But when she opened her eyes, something was wrong. She wasn't in Trevor's bed anymore. Lindsay jolted upright, heart pounding. She was in her old bedroom. Jake's bedroom, their bedroom. Same creaky bed, same stale scent of old wood, same crooked dresser in the corner. But something was wrong. Trevor was gone. The window was shut, yet the glass trembled like someone, or something, was knocking from the other side. She swung her legs off the bed, her bare feet meeting the icy floor. The beige walls around her were cracked, hairline fractures that ran deep, like the house itself was splitting open. She crossed to the mirror. Her reflection stared back, eyes hollow, pitch-black voids. Lindsay stumbled, catching her foot on the rug. On the nightstand lay a strange stained ticket. Karmaville, one-way business class. The handwriting was twisted, childlike. The paper smelled like mold and earth. What the hell is this? She muttered, voice shaking. As her fingers brushed the ticket, a shock sparked through her. The walls groaned. The cracks widened like veins. The house trembled. She bolted for the door, but it didn't lead to Chicago. Outside was a different world, some distorted city where broken glass paved the streets and torn letters floated on the wind. She stepped outside, the shards slicing into her feet. One slip of paper clung to her toes. Jake, I'll be late. Don't wait up. Her handwriting, her lie. Another floated by. I love you. She tried to throw them away, but the wind slapped them back into her face. The air stank of decay, but still, faintly, she could smell jasmine, the perfume she used to wear for Jake. Then came the whisper. You betrayed him, witch. It came from everywhere. Air, fog, shadows. Lindsay spun in place, dizzy, confused. She was still in lingerie, blood now dotting her feet from the glass. Her breath hitched. What is this? A dream? She shouted. Some kind of sick joke. But this was no dream. Out of the fog stepped a woman. Gaunt, weathered, wrapped in a ripped coat. Cigarette in one hand, smoke curling like fingers. Welcome to Karmaville, sweetheart, she rasped. Voice like rusted hinges, smile like a scar. Name's Marge, I'm your guide. Lindsay staggered back. Where the hell am I? You're in the place where people like you get sent, Marge said, puffing. Your man whispered the right words, and karma came knocking. You should thank Jake. Lindsay let out a nervous laugh. Jake? Please. He couldn't punch his way out of a paper bag. This is some hallucination. Call it whatever you want, Marge shrugged. But that ticket's one way, and Karma? She doesn't miss. Lindsay looked down at the paper again. It was burning in her hand. You betrayed! The whisper came louder now. She looked up. At the end of the cracked glass street stood a tall, shifting shadow. Jake's voice drifted on the air. Lindsay? She blinked. The shadow vanished. What now? She asked, breathless. Marge pointed into the fog with her cigarette. Walk. And pray she's in a forgiving mood, though I doubt it. Lindsay stepped forward, the glass beneath her crunching like dry bones. She didn't know where she was going. But this was just the beginning. Jake stirred, face down on the kitchen table. His head throbbed like a busted engine. His mug, best husband, lay on its side, whiskey soaking the floor. Buddy nudged his arm gently. He sat up, eyes burning. The house was silent. Too silent. Lindsay was gone. But her words still echoed. Zero, real man. Jake stood, legs shaky from booze. Buddy growled low, eyes on the bedroom door. Jake followed his gaze. He opened the door and froze. There on the pillow lay a crumpled ticket, damp, faded. It smelled of dirt and something older. The words controller twisted across it in warped, shaky lettering. Jake picked it up. The room shimmered, folded, burned. He was no longer in his kitchen. He stood in a city that wasn't his. Fog wrapped the buildings like bandages. Glass cracked underfoot. He looked down, an old note in her handwriting. Jake, I love you. He kicked it aside. Love, he muttered. Sure. A whisper slid through the fog. You betrayed. You betrayed. He turned, scanning. Shadows slithered between ruined buildings like dead fingers. And then her, Lindsay, lightly dressed, barefoot, lost, holding the same ticket. She opened her mouth to scream, but no sound came. Jake stared. No rage, no sorrow, just a hollow weight in his chest. And then cold fingers tapped his shoulder. He turned. Marge. Looking in the wrong direction, boy, she rasped. He didn't answer. Welcome to Karmaville. Is this real? Jake whispered. Doesn't matter. You called Karma. She heard you. He looked back at Lindsay. She was stumbling through the fog like prey. What do I do? He asked. Nothing, Marge said, dragging on her cigarette. This isn't your story anymore. Just watch. Jake's jaw tightened. Spectator, he repeated. The word felt like rust. Jake stood in the fog, eyes locked on Lindsay as she flailed in the distance, calling his name. Once he would have run to her, back when her laugh warmed him, when she curled beside him at night. But that woman was gone. The person now? A stranger in his wife's skin. She cheated, lied, humiliated him, called him a weak man. Zero. Now she was lost, and he didn't care. She spun around like she felt him watching. Their eyes met. Jake, she called out. He didn't move. He felt nothing, not grief, not rage. Just cold, solid silence, like a workshop with the lights off and the tools packed away. You earned this, he thought. Marge lit another cigarette beside him, smoke curling around her words. She won't pull you in, she said. And you won't pull her out. Karma's fair like that. Everyone gets what's coming. Jake clenched his fists, not from anger, but something deeper. Justice, a long overdue reckoning. He watched her vanish into the fog and didn't flinch. Morning broke over Jake's house, dull and gray. The scent of wet dirt hung in the air. Riley Rye Thompson stood on the porch with a steaming gas station coffee in hand, gangly, sleep-deprived, chewing on a toothpick like always. Jake hadn't answered his calls. The workshop should have been open an hour ago, but the place was locked down. Not like Jake at all. Rye knocked, then tried the door. Unlocked. Inside smelled like whiskey and something sour. Maybe dinner left too long on the stove. Buddy ran out from the kitchen barking, tail wagging like he'd just seen a ghost. Rye squatted down, ruffling the dog's fur. Where's your guy, huh? Buddy just licked his hand. Rye stepped into the kitchen. The mug was overturned, a puddle of whiskey beneath it. Cold beans sat in a forgotten pan on the stove. He frowned. Jake didn't drink like this. Not even on the worst days. Rye checked the bedroom. The bed was messed up, but only on one side. No Lindsay. Her coat wasn't hanging by the door either. Weird, he muttered, chewing harder on his toothpick. Out back, the neighborhood's nosiest pair of eyes were waiting. Doreen Kelly, clutching her cinnamon-laced coffee and leaning against the fence like she owned the place. Rye raised a hand. Hey, Mrs. Kelly, seen Jake? She waddled closer, steam rising from her mug like incense. Not since last night, she rasped. But I saw Lindsay. Stormed out like she was on fire, slammed that door so hard I thought the windows would pop. Where'd she go? Doreen sipped slowly. To her boyfriend, probably. That guy Trevor. Tall, slick, looks like a mobster with that gold watch. I saw them cuddled up in a car a few weeks back. She whispered in his ear. He grinned like the devil. Rye's stomach sank. The name hit hard. Trevor was a familiar rumor, some rich jerk sniffing around local garages. You're serious? He asked. Dead serious, she said. Everyone saw it coming except Jake. Poor fool. Always trusted her, even when she barely came home. Always on that damn phone. Rye remembered Lindsay stopping by the shop a while back. High heels, red lipstick. Is Jake in? She'd asked with a smile, then walked out before he could answer. He hadn't thought anything of it. Until now. She dumped him, didn't she? Rye said, more to himself. Threw him out like garbage, Doreen said. Screamed something about a real man. Divorce. Jake didn't say a word, just stood there frozen. Rye looked back at the house. It felt off, too quiet. Even Buddy had gone still, ears low. 3 years working side by side with Jake. Guy was steady, loyal, the kind that didn't break easy. Lindsay? She always acted like Jake was beneath her. We need to find him, Rye said, turning toward the shop. Maybe he's hiding out back. Doreen narrowed her eyes. Whatever happened here, it's not normal. Yesterday, Jake looked like a man, standing at the edge of something. Rye didn't answer, just nodded and stepped inside. He could feel it too. Something wasn't right, and Jake might be in trouble. Lindsay wandered barefoot through Carmaville, the jagged glass slicing her feet. She didn't stop. Couldn't. Her mind still refused to accept where she was, or what this was. The fog shifted, revealing a flickering vacancy sign above a crumbling motel, the kind she'd snuck into with Trevor more times than she'd care to admit. The door creaked open on its own. She stepped inside, but it wasn't a motel. It was a maze. Endless corridors. Identical doors, stale cigarette smoke, sweat, and something sweet. Her jasmine perfume hung in the air. Marge leaned against the doorway, cigarette burning low, grinning like a devil. First test, she said, pointing down the hall. Mirror of betrayal. Look, but don't lie. Karma hates liars. I'm not scared, Lindsay said, but her voice cracked. She walked forward. The walls lit up with mirrors, hundreds floor to ceiling. In each one, she saw herself, but not as she was now. She saw who she'd been. In one reflection, a motel off I-55. She was on Trevor's lap, peeling off his shirt. Jake's home, waiting with some stupid bean dinner, she laughed. Probably lit a candle. Trevor grinned, poking her ribs. Poor loser. Should have married his dog. They fell into bed, laughing. The mirror screamed her voice back at her. Lindsay jumped, backing away, but the corridor moved with her. Another mirror, Trevor's apartment. She stood by the window, without clothes, swirling wine. He thinks I'm working late, she said. 10 years, and he still doesn't get how pathetic he is. You've trained him well, Trevor said from the couch, scene after scene. Motels, parking lots, offices. Her voice on loop. I'm working late. Don't wait up. You're better than him. And always, laughter, sharp and cruel. No, Lindsay gasped, spinning. The mirrors screamed louder, closing in. Her skin slick with sweat, underwear clinging to her. She slammed her fists against the glass. Stop! The reflection cracked, but didn't shatter. She pressed her forehead to the cold surface. It wasn't that bad, she whispered. Everyone cheats. It's not a crime. The mirrors hummed. Then a voice, deep, alien, boomed. Admit it. She shook her head. Not my fault. Jake was weak. I just wanted to live. Then the final image flickered. Yesterday. She was on Trevor, laughing, shouting. Jake's a zero in everything, Trevor added. Give him a keychain as a goodbye gift. Lindsay choked on her laughter. The mirror howled. She dropped to her knees, covering her ears. In the shadows, Jake watched. He saw everything, the scenes, the lies, the betrayals, her mocking voice, her laughter. But he didn't feel hate. Just silence, cold and still. Lindsay looked up, tears streaking her face, not from guilt, from fear, from losing control. Fine, she screamed. I did it! I betrayed him! Happy now? The corridor fell silent. One black door opened at the end. She stood, shaky, and moved toward it. For a moment, she thought she saw Jake's silhouette in the shadows. She looked away. She didn't need him. Not then. Not now. Jake said nothing. His jaw clenched. Marge blew a cloud of smoke. First confession, she muttered. Karma's just getting warmed up. He nodded, still watching. Her laughter still echoed in his ears, but it didn't hurt anymore. Just felt right. Lindsay stepped into the fog again. Behind her, the motel door slammed shut. Ahead, a familiar sight. Trevor's apartment, or a warped version of it. The walls pulsed like melted wax. The windows were black voids. A loud ticking filled the air. Tick, tock, tick, tock. Marge stood by the entrance, smoke spiraling like a warning. "Second test," she said. "This one's deeper, the kind none of you think matters." "I handled the first," Lindsay said, lifting her chin. Marge just smirked. Inside, the ticking grew louder, like a clock lodged in her skull. In the center stood a shadow, tall, featureless. In place of eyes were two spinning gold watch faces. Trevor. She recognized him by the gold watch he flaunted like a trophy. But now it pulsed like a time bomb. "Lindsay," the shadow rasped, voice warped like a dying radio. "You're mine." She tried to back up. The floor buckled, locking her in place. "What are you?" she whispered. The shadow moved, and a new memory played like a film projected on the wall. His office, 6 months ago. She was there, dropping a paper on his desk. Jake's contract, a big job, a shot at saving the shop. "He doesn't even know I took it," she grinned. "If you beat him to it, he's done." Trevor smiled. "Smart girl." The scene shifted. Trevor made the call. Jake stood in his garage, confused, helpless. "They bailed on me, Lynn," he said, scratching his head. She'd nodded back then, smiling inside. "You deserve it," she'd thought. The shadow stepped forward. The ticking slammed like hammers. "You didn't just cheat," it hissed. "You destroyed him." "Liar," she muttered. The shadow leaned closer. "Say he hit you, that's all it takes. Say the words, and you walk free." Lindsay froze, her breath caught, and the test was waiting for her answer. Lindsay pictured Trevor's smirk, the scent of his cologne, warmth, power. Then Jake, tired eyes, grease-stained hands. She could lie. One word, and this would all be over. The shadow in front of her whispered, "You're mine." The golden dials for eyes ticked faster. "No," she said suddenly, surprising even herself. Her jaw locked, eyes fixed on the faceless figure. "He didn't hurt me. He just existed." The shadow hissed like steam hitting steel. "Then pay." The dials flared, blinding. Trevor's form dissolved into smoke. The ticking echoed through the warped room. The ground cracked. Lindsay dropped to her knees, gasping. A black door opened ahead. She crawled toward it, refusing to look back. From the shadows of Karmaville, Jake stood beside Marge, watching. Every scene, every betrayal, every cruel smile. Trevor stealing his biggest contract. Lindsay laughing about it. He remembered the night he lost the deal. He came home and said, "We'll get through it." She nodded, hid her eyes, and went to bed. Now he knew the truth. Marge exhaled slowly, smoke curling upward. "Big bombshell, huh?" Jake didn't answer. He just clenched his fists. No sorrow, no fury, just cold clarity. This wasn't about a fling. She had taken his trust, his work, his life, and tossed it aside. He watched her crawl toward the next door and thought, pay for everything. Back in Jake's empty house, Rye stood motionless in the kitchen. Afternoon light filtered through the windows like it had given up. Buddy whined, nose in his empty bowl. Jake was still gone. No note, no sign. Rye poured water for the dog and rubbed the back of his neck, chewing a fresh toothpick. What the hell happened here? He checked the basement. The steps creaked underfoot, the air thick with dust and damp metal. He flipped the light. It flickered, then held. Old tools, tires, boxes marked Lindsay's stuff, and in the corner, a weathered chest with a rusty latch. Rye cracked it open. Inside, faded photos, brittle newspapers, coiled rope, and on top, a thick leather-bound journal. Edna Carter, Jake's grandmother. Rye had heard of her, a cold, hard woman who ran the family like a drill sergeant. He flipped to the first page. March 15th, 1972. He went to her. Karmaville will find him. His pulse quickened. He sat on the floor, flipping further. March 20th. William thought I didn't know. 20 years married and he sneaks off with some hussy. I saw them. I told him. Repay the debt. He left. Never came back. Rye froze. Jake had muttered those same words weeks ago, drunk and bitter after a fight with Lindsay. Repay the debt to those who betray. The lights blinked. A shadow shifted in the corner, tall, hunched, like a woman leaning on a cane. Rye scrambled to his feet. Nothing there. Just swirling dust. Upstairs, the door slammed. He bolted toward the sound. Doreen stood in the kitchen, mug in hand. Buddy barked at her. "Why are you yelling?" she asked. "I wasn't," Rye said breathlessly, holding up the journal. "Found this. Edna's. She wrote about Karmaville, about her husband. Said Karma took him." Doreen's expression changed. She grabbed the journal and flipped through. She was something else, she muttered. Didn't need a broom to be a witch. People feared her tongue more than any curse. She stopped on a line. Karma took him for treason. "I knew it," she whispered. "Knew what?" Rye asked. "She cursed William. People always said it. Now Jake, he's not here, and neither is Lindsay. You think Jake did something?" "I think Karma runs in that family," Doreen said. "And Jake, he looked hollow yesterday, like a man already gone." "And Lindsay?" Rye's voice was dry. "She betrayed him, like William betrayed Edna, and Karma doesn't skip generations." Meanwhile, Lindsay emerged from the nightmare version of Trevor's apartment, the door slamming behind her like a coffin lid. The ticking still echoed in her head. But Karmaville wasn't finished. The fog thickened. The glittering glass streets vanished. Ahead stood a house, rotted, overgrown, paint peeling off like dead skin. Her childhood home. She hadn't seen it in years. The windows were empty voids. The porch choked in weeds. Marge was already there, cigarette glowing. "Third test," she said, blowing smoke. "Run if you want. Won't help." Lindsay's legs shook, but she lifted her chin. "I'm not running!" The door creaked open on its own. Inside it was dark, but she knew the smell. Mold, wet wood, and distant shouts. Echoes from her past. She took a breath. The memories struck like lightning. Lindsay was 12. Amy was 10. Back then, their childhood home had been a cage. Small, tense, loud. Their father yelled. Their mother cried. Lindsay learned to survive by taking. Amy stayed silent, watching her big sister like she hung the moon. That trust always annoyed Lindsay. The scene materialized. Their bedroom, 2 beds, peeling floral wallpaper. A younger Lindsay clutched stolen cash, smirking as she chewed candy. Amy sat on the edge of the bed, eyes wide. "You took it from Mom, didn't you?" Amy whispered. "Shut up," Lindsay muttered. "No one's gonna know." But their mom found out. Red-eyed, she stormed into the room. "Who took the money?" Lindsay didn't hesitate. "Amy did. I saw her." Amy didn't argue, just cried as their mom grabbed her wrist. Lindsay stood by, numb but relieved. She'd won. The memory shattered. Cold filled the air. Shadows deepened. A small figure rose from the bed, pale, bruised, hair hanging in frozen strands. "Amy, you betrayed me," she said softly, her voice sharp as a needle. Lindsay stumbled backward. "It was one time. I was a kid." Amy stepped forward. "More than once." Visions spun like a reel. Lindsay, 15, stealing from Amy's wallet, 17, blaming her for a broken vase. 20, leaving her behind with their drunk parents and never looking back. Then, Amy's death. Depression. No help, no sister. Lindsay hadn't even gone to the funeral. "You took everything. I paid for it," Amy said. "You lived." "I died." Lindsay dropped to her knees. "I didn't mean to." But the words were hollow. She remembered Jake now, too, his dinners, his loyalty, his heartbreak. She'd done the same to him. Amy didn't look angry, only broken. "You can make it right," she whispered. "Trade yourself for me, or carry this forever." Lindsay sobbed, the guilt cutting deeper than anything before. She reached out. "I'm sorry. I did it. I betrayed you. Everyone." Their fingers touched. Icy cold surged through her body. "Take me instead," Lindsay whispered. Amy nodded. A blinding light cracked through the room. The walls shook. The yelling of their parents finally went quiet. When the light faded, Lindsay lay alone. The cold lingered like grief. Jake stood silently beside Marge in Karmaville's shadows. He'd seen it all. The lies, the betrayals. Her tears didn't move him. She deserves this, he thought. Her guilt came too late. Marge lit another cigarette. "She chose this path," she said. "You wanted justice. Now she'll carry it forever." Her words drifted through the air like smoke, mixing with the broken glass streets of Karmaville. Jake clenched his fists. "What happens now?" he asked, voice hoarse. "She passed 3 tests. Will Karma let her go?" "Maybe, maybe not," Marge shrugged. "Karma decides. You got what you came for. Your part's done." Jake took a step back. Marge blocked him with a gentle elbow. "You're not judge or executioner. Just a witness, and your time here's over." The fog thickened around him. Through it, he saw a faint shadow, his grandmother Edna's form, stern as ever. Repay the debt to those who betrayed. Images flashed, Lindsay slamming the door, the empty shop after Trevor stole his contract, Buddy whining in a cold house. Go, Marge said. Carmaville's done with you. Before he could reply, the fog surged forward and swallowed him. He caught one last glimpse of Lindsay, her eyes wide, reaching for him. Was it fear? Regret? He'd never know. And then everything disappeared. Jake woke up with a jolt. His head rested on the kitchen table, the light flickering above. Buddy nudged his leg and whimpered. The house was quiet. Lindsay was gone. Buddy, he whispered, rubbing the dog's head. It's just us now, huh? The dog yelped gently. Jake stood, legs unsteady. 6:15 a.m. The world outside was gray, heavy with silence. Lindsay wasn't coming back. He didn't need proof. He just knew. He wiped sweat from his brow. Karma, the word echoed in his head. Maybe it was real. Maybe just a nightmare brought on by too much whiskey. But either way, something had changed. And Lindsay, she was never coming home. Near the bedroom door, something odd caught Jake's eye. A faded yellow ticket, the same kind from Carmaville. Controller. One way. The crooked letters shimmered in the dim light. He picked it up. It smelled like wet soil and cold air. His skin prickled. Not just a whiskey dream, he muttered, pocketing it. A knock came at the door. Jake, you in there? It was Rye, his wiry assistant, tired and anxious, a toothpick dangling from his lips. He didn't wait for a response. Jake, buddy! Rye burst in, wide-eyed. Damn, I thought you were... Never mind, thank God. He scanned the wrecked kitchen. Bottles, half-eaten beans, cold coffee. Have you been drinking all night? The workshop's closed, your phone's off, lights on. Thought maybe it was about Lindsay. Jake slumped into a chair. Paradise, he said quietly. Rye set a coffee on the table and kicked a bottle away. Where have you been? What the hell happened here? Jake rubbed his face. Ghosts? Karma? He didn't know how to say it, but something had happened. Something real. Lindsay's gone, he finally said. Last night. Then things spiraled. Rye nodded. Doreen said she stormed out, slammed the door. Jake exhaled. After that, I got drunk, and I remembered something my grandmother used to say. Repay the debt to those who betray. Rye straightened, pulling something from his jacket. I found this in your basement. He handed over the leather notebook. Jake flipped under through the pages. Edna Carter, her handwriting, her words, Carmaville, the same warnings. This is real, he said, stunned. I think I went there. Rye looked between the journal and the yellow ticket Jake now held out. I don't know what this is, but if Edna believed in it, maybe it's more than a dream, Rye said, uneasy. He shut the notebook. Let's drop the ghost talk. You need sleep, and maybe something stronger than coffee. Jake smiled weakly. I've already had enough whiskey. A little more won't hurt, Rye said, tossing his jacket over a chair. Then bed. I covered for you. Told clients you were sick. Jake nodded. Thanks. You're the only one still here. Come on, boss, Rye said, patting his back. We're a team. They cleaned up, dumped the beans, cleared the bottles. Neither mentioned Lindsay again. Jake was too numb to feel anything about her now. Later, Rye dropped onto the couch. Jake sat nearby, flipping through the diary in silence. You should crash in your bed, Rye said. I've been up all day. Mightn't nap here? Jake was about to agree when a soft sound came from the hallway. A latch, clicking. They froze. You heard that? Rye whispered. Yeah, Jake said, jaw tight. Someone's there. But Lindsay's gone. Jake moved toward the bedroom. Buddy growled, ears up. Jake pushed the door. No one inside. But a shape flickered on the wall in the lamplight. A silhouette. Thunder rolled across the sky. Jake woke on the couch, dawn gray and heavy through the windows. Rye was still asleep. Buddy sat alert by the glass, watching the wind stir the yard. On the other side of the city, Trevor McClintock jolted awake in his luxury penthouse. Lynn, he muttered, running a hand through his hair. What's with the screaming? I've got a meeting in an hour. Lindsay stood in the corner, clinging to a sheet, eyes wild. She looked like she'd seen a ghost. No, she whispered. No, I was there. Carmaville. It was real. Trevor sat up, confused. What the hell are you talking about? You were fine 5 minutes ago. But Lindsay didn't hear him. Her mind was still trapped in the fog. Lindsay sat frozen in Trevor's apartment, replaying the nightmare in her head. 3 tests, Amy's ghost, confessions, that blinding light. Now, here she was, waking up next to Trevor, his cologne clinging to the sheets. "I remember it," she whispered. "Glass streets, Marge, it was real." Trevor groaned as he rolled out of bed. "Lindsay, seriously, I've got an investor meeting in an hour. I don't have time for your bad dreams." He downed half a juice bottle and started the coffee maker. Lindsay pressed her fingers to her temples, trying to ground herself. But the images wouldn't leave. Amy's voice, Jake in the fog, Trevor as a soulless shadow, whispering, "You are mine." "Are you listening to me?" Trevor snapped. "You okay or what?" She stared at him. He was tall, polished, everything she'd once thought she wanted. But now he made her uneasy. The man in her memory felt colder, hollow. "I don't know," she muttered, arms wrapped around herself. "Maybe I need help. Something's wrong with me." Trevor sighed and softened his tone. "You're just feeling guilty. Jake messed you up. Dreams like that? Your conscience?" She flinched at the word. "Conscience?" she said, dazed. "I don't have one." The tears came fast, uninvited. She saw herself mocking Jake, laughing with Trevor, saying 0. Trevor stepped closer, gripping her shoulders. "Do you regret it?" "I don't know," she shouted, breaking away. "He was good to me. I destroyed that. For what?" Trevor frowned. "You chose me. Remember, I gave you everything. Status, money. Jake was nothing." Lindsay nodded numbly. "Yeah, maybe." He kissed her forehead. "Forget the past. The contract's covered. No one's finding out. I've got this." He disappeared into the shower, leaving her alone. She sank onto the bed, heart racing. It was just a dream, she told herself. Move on. But the fear still scratched inside her. Later, alone in the silence of the penthouse, Lindsay stood in front of the mirror. Her eyes were sunken, her face pale, and for a split second, the reflection changed. Dark holes instead of eyes. She screamed. It vanished, but the terror stayed. She grabbed her phone. No calls. Not from Jake. Of course not. Why would he? But she wanted to hear his voice. To say something. Her mind drifted to their small home, that old sofa, movie nights, their wedding. Real love. Before she broke it. "You betrayed me," Jake's voice echoed from Carmaville. The phone slipped from her hands. She collapsed to her knees. "Help," she whispered before everything went black. Back at the garage, Jake and Rye opened late. A customer was already at the gate. "You guys ghosted me twice," the man grumbled. Rye handled it. "Sorry, unexpected situation. Truck's ready. Give us a minute." Jake ran a quick check. The tools, the smell of oil, the clink of metal. Here, at least, he felt sane. The truck was fine. The customer paid and left. "See?" Rye said, wiping his hands. "Another job done. Keep it up and the month's not lost." Jake gave a small nod. "Yeah, maybe." They worked through the morning, the radio humming under the buzz of drills and gusts of wind outside. But Jake's thoughts kept drifting. To the fog, to Lindsay. Was she still trapped in Carmaville? Or did she make it back? Around noon, they took a break. Jake sat quietly, soda in hand, when the phone rang. "Carter's workshop. Jake speaking." A woman's voice replied, sharp and anxious. "Hi, this is Maggie from Rockland Trucks. Remember us?" Jake's eyes narrowed. "Yeah, I remember. Rockland, his biggest lost contract, the one Lindsay helped Trevor steal. There have been developments," Maggie said. "Can you come in at 4? The boss wants to talk about a new contract." Jake glanced at Rye, who raised his brows. "I'll be there," Jake said and hung up. Rye leaned in. "Think it's real?" "I don't know," Jake admitted. "But if we get that job back, it could save us." "Hell yeah," Rye grinned. "We keep working, then swing by Rockland at 4. Across the city, tension filled the halls at Rockland Trucks. An internal audit had flagged an old contract, Jake Carter's. And the man who got it instead? Trevor McClintock. The name sparked questions, and soon, a reckoning. The audit at Rockland Trucks exposed everything: fraudulent invoices, fake repairs, ghost subcontractors. Trevor McClintock had been quietly siphoning money for months, and once the numbers came to light, the company acted fast. By midday, police were at his office with a warrant, but Trevor was out finalizing deals, unaware of what was coming. His assistant tried calling him, but got voicemail. When Trevor returned around 1 p.m., confident and satisfied from a successful meeting, the officers were waiting. In front of shocked co-workers, he was detained, read his rights, and accused of fraud. He tried calling for legal help, but it was too late. His lawyer arrived minutes after Trevor was already in custody, stunned and completely unprepared for how fast his world had collapsed. At the same time, Lindsay was spiraling back at the penthouse. Still shaken by the panic attack and haunted by memories of Carmaville, she wandered aimlessly, trying to calm herself. But the fear didn't fade. Her hands trembled, and when she dropped a glass and cut her foot, the pain only made things worse. Disoriented and overwhelmed, she called emergency services. Paramedics arrived to find her on the floor, bleeding and barely coherent. She was muttering disconnected phrases about Jake, Amy, Carmaville. They sedated her and rushed her to the hospital. Later that day, Jake arrived at Rockland Trucks for a meeting he hadn't expected. Maggie, the assistant who had called earlier, greeted him and led him to the executive floor. There, Mr. Rockwell and two others explained what the audit had uncovered, how Trevor had manipulated contracts and how Jake's name had originally been part of the plan until it was pushed aside. They apologized and offered Jake the opportunity to become their official contractor, taking over what Trevor had stolen. Jake, surprised but steady, agreed to review the proposal and return with a quote. For his small garage, the deal meant steady work and a financial boost that could change everything. After years of struggle, something was finally turning in his favor. As he left the office, Maggie confirmed Trevor had been arrested. Jake said nothing, but he felt a strange mix of closure and lingering weight. Back at the car, Rye was waiting. When Jake told him the contract looked promising, Rye celebrated. They drove back to the shop in silence, both knowing this might be the beginning of something better. At the hospital, Lindsay woke in a sterile room, disoriented. The nurse told her she'd suffered a nervous breakdown. She barely listened. The images from Carmaville still clung to her thoughts. Amy's ghost, Jake's face, the unbearable guilt. The nurse suggested maybe it was all just a dream, something from a movie. But Lindsay knew it wasn't. This wasn't just stress. Something deeper had followed her back, and it wasn't finished yet. Lindsay stood by the window, watching torn clouds swirl across the trees. The sterile hospital smell made her stomach turn. Inside, she felt a hollow fear she couldn't shake. A psychiatrist entered the room, asking about her condition. The nurse mentioned Lindsay had spoken about a strange place, Carmaville. She dismissed it as stress-induced dreams, though deep down she knew it wasn't. The memories were too vivid. The doctor suggested a short stay for evaluation. Her mental state was fragile, and her physical injury needed monitoring. Lindsay didn't fight it. She had nowhere else to go. Trevor had vanished, and she couldn't return to Jake. Not after everything. She agreed to stay, quietly accepting that maybe this was part of her punishment. The next morning, Jake woke at home to calm and quiet. No nightmares, no fog, just Buddy asleep on the rug and the faint scent of morning coffee. Around 9, his neighbor Doreen came knocking. She brought news. An ambulance had been seen outside Trevor's penthouse. Word was, Lindsay had been carried out unconscious. As for Trevor, he'd been arrested the same day for fraud. Jake felt a punch to the gut. Their whole world had collapsed overnight. Doreen asked if he would go see her. He hesitated. The betrayal still stung, but guilt and old affection pulled at him. She'd been his wife for a decade. As much as he wanted to stay angry, part of him couldn't ignore what she was going through. Later that day, he skipped work and drove to the hospital. He found her in the psych ward. A nurse pointed him to her room and warned not to upset her. He nodded, heart pounding. Inside, Lindsay lay on a hospital bed, pale and bandaged. When she saw him, emotion swept across her face. Shock, shame, sorrow. She cried as he stepped in. She didn't ask why he came, just that he had. That alone meant something. He sat beside her, quietly listening. She admitted everything. How she helped Trevor steal his contract. How she thought she wanted more. Status, money, control. But it had all fallen apart. She was sorry for everything. Jake didn't have answers. He didn't even know why he came. Maybe it was to see if she was still alive. Maybe it was closure. The hospital room was silent. Jake stood by the bed, unsure what to feel. The betrayal still hurt, but so did seeing Lindsay like this, fragile, wrecked. She spoke quietly about nightmares, about walking through strange glass streets, haunted by her sister Amy and memories of Jake. She thought it was all in her head. But when Jake told her he'd seen it too, Carmaville, something shifted in her. Maybe it hadn't been a dream. She broke down again, blaming herself. She'd ruined everything she touched, she said. Jake didn't respond right away. Rain tapped the window behind him and he stared out, unsure how to offer comfort to someone who had once torn his world apart. Lindsay admitted she might be transferred to the psych ward. Doctors said she needed time to stabilize. Jake didn't know how to help or if he even should. Still, when she reached for his hand and begged not for love but for help, he promised support if she needed it. Money, a visit, whatever he could do, without sacrificing himself. Then he left. Outside in the hallway, he paused to breathe. It was surreal. His ex-wife in a psychiatric hospital, her lover in jail, his own life now a strange mix of anger, sorrow, and something like reluctant compassion. Back in the car, Rye looked up from the paper, reading Jake's face. Jake admitted Lindsay's condition was bad, physically and emotionally. He wasn't sure what to do. Rye reminded him he couldn't save everyone, especially not someone who'd walked away on her own. It wasn't his job to fix her. Jake didn't argue, but part of him still struggled to let go. A week passed, the workshop flourished, the deal with Rockland Trucks was finalized, and steady work began to roll in. Rye reorganized the space, new clients showed up, and Jake finally felt something he hadn't in months: hope. He learned Lindsay had been moved to long-term psychiatric care. The diagnosis was serious: deep depression, possibly bordering on psychosis. He visited once more, bringing fruit. She was heavily medicated and barely coherent. She whispered that she still saw Carmaville in her dreams. He told her maybe it would fade. She apologized again as he left. Jake walked out heavy-hearted. He'd done what he could. Meanwhile, Trevor sat in a cold jail cell, struggling to adjust to life behind bars. His bail was denied, and the fraud charges piled up. Testimonies came in from former clients. Prosecutors gathered evidence. His empire crumbled, and no one came to save him. Not even Lindsay, who was now unreachable, lost in her own collapse. He thought about their late nights, their arrogance, how they'd laughed at Jake. Now he was alone, everything slipping away. He scoffed at the idea of karma. But deep down, the irony wasn't lost on him. By mid-autumn, the garage was running smoothly. Jake had structure again: clients, repairs, and purpose. One evening, Rye mentioned his sister Katie was coming to town and suggested they all have dinner. Jake brushed it off at first, saying he wasn't ready. Too much baggage. But Rye wasn't pushing for romance. Just company. Jake thought about how he spent most nights, working late or staring at the walls. Maybe a break wouldn't hurt. He finally shrugged. All right, why not? On a quiet Friday evening, Rye and Jake headed to a small riverside restaurant. Waiting there was Rye's sister Katie, bright-eyed, warm, and effortlessly kind. She looked like Rye, only softer, with light brown hair in a braid and curious green-gray eyes. Jake was caught off guard by her cheerful energy. They talked over beers and veggie snacks, the conversation light and easy. Rye joked. Katie laughed, and for the first time in months, Jake smiled without forcing it. Katie asked about his garage, and he admitted things had been rough, but were finally turning around. She shared that she'd just moved back, a primary school teacher looking for a fresh start. Her simplicity and honesty made something inside Jake shift, like sunlight after a long winter. Later, as the evening wound down, she left early for a school interview the next day. Rye nudged Jake, clearly pleased. Jake only nodded. For once, he felt calm. A month passed. The Rockland Trucks contract was in full swing and the shop was busy. One afternoon, Jake received the divorce papers Lindsay had promised. She was giving up everything: the house, the car, any claims. Still, Jake called the hospital to confirm. They said she'd been moved to a closed psychiatric unit due to worsening symptoms. If he needed her signature, they'd allow a short visit. Jake didn't want to go, but he had to. The locked ward was cold and bare. Lindsay sat quietly on a plain cot, dressed in hospital blue, squeezing a rubber stress ball. She looked thinner, worn down by meds and time. She said she didn't want anything. She'd caused enough damage and wanted him to move on. He hesitated, but let her sign the forms. With that, their marriage was officially over. She handed him the papers and whispered, "I'm not your wife now. You're free." Jake thanked her, wished her well, and walked out. The goodbye final. What remained between them had ended long before the ink dried. The visit left Jake hollow. For days, he moved through work in a daze until Rye stepped in again. "We're heading out of town Saturday. Me, Katie, a few friends. Come with us." Jake agreed, more out of exhaustion than interest. But the crisp autumn air, the woods, and friendly company helped. Katie noticed his distance and gently asked what was wrong. He told her the truth. His ex was in a hospital, her affair partner in jail, and he felt free but hollow. Katie said freedom can feel that way, but it's also a beginning. She asked him if he wanted to be happy. He paused, unsure, then admitted, "I think I do." She smiled and said softly, "Then let yourself move forward." For a brief moment, he wanted to hug her. He didn't, but she reached for his hand and squeezed it gently. That small gesture, warm and steady, stirred something in him he thought was long gone. What began between Jake and Katie was slow and sincere. They exchanged messages in the evenings, sharing stories from their day, her excitement over her new job at a private school, his updates from the workshop. Occasionally, they had dinner together with Rye, who was clearly pleased to see his boss smiling again. As the months passed, Lindsay remained in treatment. Occasionally, she sent short, shaky letters filled with regret and memories of happier times. She asked only for Jake's forgiveness. He replied with polite, distant messages. Eventually, the letters stopped. Meanwhile, Jake and Katie grew closer. Their bond shifted from friendship into something deeper. At first, Jake resisted the idea of love after what he'd been through, but slowly, the darkness lifted. A year after Lindsay was hospitalized, Jake and Katie married in a simple ceremony. Rye stood as best man. Doreen cried with joy. Business thrived. Katie taught, and soon after, they welcomed twin daughters, Faith and Hope. The name suggestion came from Rye, and Katie agreed without hesitation. They moved into a bigger home, but kept the old house as a rental, its worn couch now holding new stories. Jake built a life filled with laughter, family, and love. Every time he looked at his daughters, he thought, "This is what I was missing." Years later, with the girls in school and the shop running smoothly, Jake was closing up when the phone rang. An unknown number. It was Dr. Rossi from the hospital. Lindsay had died that morning. Cardiac arrest. No family, no one else to call. Jake agreed to handle the arrangements. After the call, he sat alone in the workshop, lost in thought. Memories flooded back. Lindsay in her wedding dress, their old puppy buddy, their small, joyful moments. And the moment it all fell apart. Only a few people came to the funeral. Jake, Katie, Rye, and two former colleagues from Lindsay's marketing days. It rained the entire time. As the earth covered the coffin, Jake stood quietly, a strange emptiness in his chest. Later that evening, they sat together at the kitchen table. The girls played with dolls nearby. "Dad, was Aunt Lindsay a bad person?" Faith asked. Jake paused. "No, sweetheart, she just got lost." "Lost how?" Hope asked. Katie gently stepped in. "Some people make choices that hurt themselves and others, but that doesn't mean they're bad. They just lost their way." The girls nodded and went back to playing. Jake and Katie exchanged a quiet look, filled with understanding and something deeper. He reached for her hand and held it. In that moment, with the sounds of their children's laughter and the warmth of home around him, Jake realized something. Karma had done its work. The past was buried. He hadn't escaped without scars, but he had been given something rare, a second chance. And this time, he wasn't letting it slip away.